Good evening. As we continue on in our series of insights into the Hagaddah, tonight we're going to begin with a paragraph of Mitchila Ovdei Avodah Zara Hayu Avoseinu, that originally our ancestors were idol worshippers. And the Beis Aaron, in his commentary entitled Chachmas Aaron, mentions that in the Gemara in Psachim, there is an argument. The Mishnah had said, Maschil bignus u'misayim b'shevach, that the appropriate way to tell the story is by beginning to discuss our disgrace and subsequently to discuss the glory. How do you discuss the disgrace and then discuss the glory? So it's a machlokas, it's a disagreement in the Gemara. Rav says that you begin with Mitchila Ovdei Avodah Zara Hayu Avoseinu, that originally our ancestors were idol worshippers. And then we continue on by saying that we got out of Egypt and Hashem gave us the Torah. Ushmuel says that we use the formula of Avodim Hayinu, that we were slaves to Paro in Mitzrayim, and today we are free people. And the Chachmas Aaron explains that the fundamental disagreement over here is that Rav feels that the focus should be on the spiritual exile and the spiritual exodus. That's why he says, begin by talking about the fact that our ancestors were idol worshippers, and then finish off about speaking that today we worship God. That's a spiritual freedom. According to Shmuel, the primary focus is on the physical freedom. That's why we start off by saying, Avadim hayinu leFaro b'Mitzrayim, that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, in order that we finish off by saying, and that Hashem took us out of there. But then the Chachmas Aaron takes this a few notches deeper. And he says that each one of them is being consistent with a concept that he expresses elsewhere. And this is a bit of a Kabbalistic concept. I will try to do my best to put it in terms that everybody can understand. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the concept that in the Kabbalistic spiritual worlds, there are 10 spheros. There are 10 fundamental spiritual forces that make up, we'll call it the Kabbalistic world. And those 10 spheros can be divided into two groups. There are the Gimel Rishonos, the first 3 of the 10, which are Keser, Chachma, and Bina. And then there are the lower 7 spheros. And if you draw an analogy between the body and the spheros, so the first 3 spheros correspond to the head, and the lower 7 spheros correspond to the body. Furthermore, he says that within the spheros, we know that they're roughly divided into 4 groups, the 10 spheros. And the 2 higher groups, which basically consist of Chachma and Bina, if you then draw an analogy to letters in a Sefer Torah, so Chachma and Bina, which again correspond to the head of a person, they are symbolized by Tamim and Nekudos. They are symbolized by the cantillation marks that show you how to chant the Torah, and by the Nekudos, by the vowels. Again, neither the cantillation marks nor the vowels actually appear in the Torah, but the highest realm of the spheros, those that correspond to the head, they correspond also to the Tamim and the Nekudos. As opposed to the lower seven spheros, they correspond to the tagin and the osios, to the crowns that are above many of the letters in the Torah, and to the letters of the Torah themselves, which he doesn't exactly explain this, but to my understanding, because the letters and the crowns are written, they sort of like symbolize something more physical than do the cantillation marks and the vowels, which are not written, but they're just understood. So the cantillation marks and the vowels are, so to speak, more spiritual than the actual physically formed letters and crowns. Furthermore, he says that in many places in the Gemara, there's a disagreement. Sometimes we'll find in the Torah a word which the way in which it is actually written in the Torah is different than the way in which we pronounce it. And sometimes the pronunciation's meaning is different than the meaning we would have given the word if all we had was the written word. So then there's a disagreement. What do we consider to be more significant? The way in which the word is pronounced or the way in which the word is written? And he discusses elsewhere that the opinion of Rav is that the way in which the word is pronounced is what takes primacy. Whereas according to Shmuel, the way the word is written takes primacy. Therefore, he says that Rav, who goes after the pronunciation of the word, you see that Rav is much more into the spiritual side and the spiritual aspect of the word. Whereas Shmuel, who focuses on the written word, he's more focused on the physical manifestation of the word. And to bring it back to the comparison to the Sefer Torah, so Rav would be more focused on the cantillation marks and the vowels, whereas Shmuel would be more focused on the letters themselves and their crowns. So that's therefore consistent with what we said over here in the Hagaddah, that Rav, who's more focused on the spiritual manifestation, that's why his formula for discussing that we began with our disgrace and we finish off speaking about our glory, that's why according to Rav, we speak about the fact that we were worshipers of idols and then we became worshipers of the one God. Whereas Shmuel, who is more focused on the physical manifestation of things, he's focused on the physical slavery and ultimately the physical freedom. Turning once again, as we've done several times over the last few days, to the Chalban, he's a little bit curious as to why is it that we even mention anything about our disgrace. We know, for example, that the Torah teaches us that if a person had done sins when he was young and today he's living an exemplary life, we're not supposed to remind him of his disgraceful past. So why in the world on Pesach night are we supposed to put a discussion of our disgraceful past at such a central point? So before I give the Chalban's response to that, I'll share with you something that I saw many years ago in the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein. Rav Moshe explained, because oftentimes, as we are being successful in life, we get so used to our success that we forget where we started from. And because of the fact that we forget where we started from, we don't fully appreciate the success that we're having now. So, of course, we don't want to rub the previous disgrace in your face. We don't want to wallow in the memory of that disgrace, but it's always good to remember where you started. So when you turn around and look behind you, you can see how far you've come from that point, and don't forget. That's what Rav Moshe Feinstein says. The Chalban makes a couple of other points. He says, first of all, that, hold on one second. Keep in mind that no matter how bad of a situation that you might find yourself in today, it doesn't mean that all is lost. That the entire Jewish nation was mired in slavery and idol worship, and all of a sudden things turned around and they were free and they were servants of Hashem. As bad as things might look, and we all know how bad things are looking for us today all around, that doesn't mean that that's where we are doomed to remain. Secondly, he says that it's also that people should keep in mind, is something we brought down earlier from the Chalban, that whatever boundaries you find yourself stuck within, you don't have to be stuck there. Whether they're boundaries being imposed on you by others, or perhaps more importantly, if they're boundaries that you are putting on yourself, you don't have to stay there. That whatever is locking you in, you have the ability to break through those lines and get out. Finally, he says to remind ourselves that we have the power to renew. He says the real power and value of freedom is the ability to change yourself, to turn yourself into something that you weren't beforehand. And that's what the Haggadah is trying to show us by beginning by discussing disgrace, and then later on discussing our success, so that we can remember all of these various lessons. Rav Yaakov Yechiel Weinberg, otherwise known as the Baal Sri De Eish, who himself was a Holocaust survivor. I'm not going to get into his whole story right now. He discusses a later part of this paragraph where it mentions, quotes a pasuk in which it says, I gave Esav Mount Seir in order to inherit it, and Yaakov and his sons went down to Mitzrayim. So it's an interesting contrast. Right then, at the exact same time as the Jewish people went to Mitzrayim, Esav got settled. He was given Mount Seir to be his inheritance, and Esav was home free. So he says, what's the understanding of this contrast? And he points out, because the mindset of an Esav is looking for immediate success. And Esav does not have the mental and emotional capacity to see the long-term results of hard work and effort. And therefore, to make Esav happy, Esav was given Mount Seir, and you've got what you want. When it came to Klal Yisrael, when it came to the Jewish nation, they were given the other path, the path of quite literally hard work, the need to have a long-term outlook until ultimately they would come to success. And he points out that in primitive societies, the focus was very much on the immediate, right? Primitive societies, as a rule, did not set down roots. They were often nomadic, traveling constantly to find where can they find food right now. But they didn't set down roots. He says, even today, we know there are Bedouins and others who still live in that way. But in order to really build a successful society, what's necessary is to have enough of a long-term outlook to set down roots in order to build something permanent. Especially, he says, when it comes to acquiring Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, we know that Chazal teach us that Eretz Yisrael is nikne b'yisurin, that in order to really take the land of Israel and make it our own, it doesn't come easy. It comes with a tremendous amount of work. And so that's again the contrast which the Haggadah is drawing for us over here, a contrast for Esav. On the one hand, he got instant success, but instant success is usually success which is not going to last. Actually, this is reminding me something a little bit off topic, but today, Monday, was the yortzeit of the Baal HaLeshem, who many consider to have been the leading Lithuanian Kabbalist at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century. And he explains that the reason why Adam Harishon didn't make it in Gan Eden, and the reason why the Jewish people were not successful after receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, and shortly thereafter they worshiped the Egel Hazav, the golden calf, is because these were both things that had been given, both Gan Eden to Adam and the Torah to the Jewish nation, without them really working for them. And if you're taken and put at the top of a tall mountain, and you haven't made the efforts to really work your way up to the top of the mountain, you are extremely likely and apt to fall down quickly. And it's not something that has any lasting. So in the same way over here, that's Esav. He was given Mount Seir, whatever he had, he had. But the Jewish people were put through a process of really working until we were finally able to earn, deserve, and keep that which we were given. I thank you all very much for listening. Mirz Hashem, we will continue tomorrow night. This is the end of our 6th recording, and there are 5 others available if you take a look at my page or on YouTube. Good night.